Welcome back to the Business Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Ann Jimenez, and in this episode, we're going to be tackling exactly how to ditch procrastination, stay motivated, and really focus on consistency with your content in this episode. Hi Loungers, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so excited to dive into the 7 power tips we have for you this week to really ditch procrastination once and for all. And let's be real, we all have been there, right? Kind of procrastinating on our content because either life gets in the way or things are really stressful. There's so many different reasons why we can kind of not really stay consistent with our content, but we also know that it's extremely important to be consistent, right? Content, just like any area of your business, will only work if you're actually doing it day in and day out. So how do you actually show up? How do you make sure that you're being a professional and treating your content with the same type of respect and commitment that you do other areas of your life, right? How do you show up every single week, deliver amazing value, really serve your community, and show up as your best self in the long run, right? Because it's all about endurance. We're on this amazing journey we call entrepreneurship, but it's not a sprint. It's totally a marathon. So how do we stay motivated? How do we stay consistent? We're going to unpack that all in today's episode. I'm actually really excited about it because we're going to tackle this into 2 parts. Part number 1, we're going to talk about the first 4 power tips and really dive into some practical applications of how you could be staying consistent and staying the course. And then in part number 2, we're going to tackle the last 3. Now, before we dig in with power tip number 1, and trust me, it's a really good one, I wanted to just thank you guys for all the love and support you've been giving us. The first episode in this series launched last week, and you guys were so incredibly supportive. You sent us so many DMs on Instagram, emailed me, sent me Facebook messages, commented on the YouTube video, and I just want to say thank you. I so appreciate you. I see you. I hear you. We do this for you. So just seeing all of that support and just the excitement around the show gave us so much encouragement and motivation to keep moving forward. In fact, this is actually the 3rd time I'm recording this episode. We had crazy tech issues this week. So I just want you to know that we're in it with you and we're going to stay consistent, right? Because that's what this whole episode is about. Now, if you're part of the Business Lounge membership, something really exciting happened this week. We released our brand new 21-page long workbook inside of Zero to Profits, the beta course. So if you are kind of diving into launching your service-based business, whether it's photography, or you're doing graphic design or social media marketing, or you're offering consulting, you're an expert or a coach, this is an amazing program to get started with, literally from scratch to getting your first 3 clients in 30 days. So I'm really excited to help you implement. We're going to be rolling out even more workbooks like this one because we're totally committed to ensuring that you're getting so much value out of that community, with the courses that you're taking and that you're implementing what you're learning. Okay, so let's dive into power tip number 1. And this one was really interesting, right? We kind of tend to think about procrastination and kind of the lack of consistency as a label, right? We think that we're procrastinators. So we label ourselves, procrastinators, and, a lot of people kind of fit into this bucket. They consider themselves procrastinators. And as I was doing research for this episode, I actually came about an awesome kind of snippet from Mel Robinson, and she actually has a really interesting take that I wanted to share with you because it made a huge difference for my own mindset. She says that procrastination is a habit. It's a habit. It's not a quality. It's not a trait. It's not a personality type. It's just a habit. And actually, more than that, it's actually a response to stress. Now, as we unpack that, I think that's really interesting because if we look at it from the lens of, this is actually a response, it's a coping mechanism that we experience when we are stressed in our lives. And we use it as a way of kind of like diffusing that level of stress. It's like, we put things off because it's stressful to have to tackle so many things at the same time. Then things start shifting, because if procrastination really is a habit, it means that we can scientifically break that habit and then replace it with something that's way more productive, right? Control and manipulate our own coping mechanism with stress, our own stress response. And isn't that fascinating? So I thought this was kind of a game changer, and she really just talks about how you break habits, how scientifically you break habits, and that's really power tip number 1, and it's to negotiate with yourself and give yourself a 5-minute window to just start. Now, research has shown that 80% of people who actually start a task complete it. So it's really interesting, because if we can manipulate our own thought patterns and the way that we think about content creation, right? The fact that it's such an important aspect of online business, you want to show up for your people, you want to position yourself as the go-to, as the expert in your field, and you really can't do that, right, if you are constantly putting things off, if you're not meeting deadlines, if you're not writing your newsletters, you're not publishing that blog post, putting out that video, creating that podcast episode, or just showing up on social media and sharing valuable tips and insights, you're just not going to see momentum. And I see this really often, not just in the Business Lounge membership, but I experience this myself in my own business, and kind of going through the different seasons, right, of business and the different stages of entrepreneurial growth. I started realizing that we kind of go through these patterns of, maybe showing up and doing the work and kind of just going at it, but then disappearing for 2 weeks or disappearing for a month and kind of falling off the wagon. And then trying to pick back up is so much harder than if we just stayed consistent. So we're never really making any real progress because we're not showing up consistently. So our entire content strategy looks like that. We're not totally committed. It's one of those things that is really interesting because we know it's important, right? Just like working out and eating right. But just because we know it's important doesn't mean that we're actually going to do it. So I'm hoping that with this episode, you'll have a game plan, a strategy, something to actually implement in your toolbox this upcoming year so you're staying consistent. I think that staying consistent is literally half the battle. If you can just show up and do that, oh my gosh, the chances of you actually growing, the chances of you actually making it online, creating an amazing, valuable audience, scaling up your services, and becoming the go-to person in your industry are so much bigger. They're much larger, right? So really exciting to kind of think about this first power tip and focus on negotiating with yourself. And the way that you do this is actually really simple, right? In my life, in my day-to-day workflow, I find that I'm constantly feeling that procrastination creeping in. And while I think that, consistency is a muscle that you strengthen over time, discipline is a muscle that you strengthen over time, we can't always rely on discipline and say, oh, we're just going to power through it. Because sometimes life happens and you just don't feel like doing things and you put them off. So instead, I want you to be really practical. And anytime you feel those thought patterns creep in, instead be like, okay, you know what? I see this. I see what's happening. I'm stressed out because my to-do list is huge. Maybe, the kids they're sick, or they're fighting downstairs, or my husband and I are just not on the same page, or, school is really intense. I'm going through finals week, or whatever it may be. And I'm just stressed out. This is just one extra thing that I have to do. And I'm just not feeling it. So give yourself 5 minutes and negotiate with yourself and promise yourself, hey, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. If within 5 minutes, after those 5 minutes are over, if I'm just still not feeling it, I'm just going to shift gears and do something else. At least for me, 99% of the time, if I don't complete the task, I make substantial progress with that task, which is so much better than just putting things off. So, and then you also feel this amazing sense of satisfaction that you overcame your own mental hurdle, and that gives you a lot of motivation. And that's really what this episode is about. It's consistency and motivation. And I always tell my students inside the Business Lounge, if you're a lounger, you know this, motivation leads to momentum, and momentum leads to motivation, right? They are this amazing kind of just sequential cause and effect type of duo where you're always in that circle, right? So if you lose your motivation, you're going to lose momentum. And if you lose momentum, you're going to lose your motivation. And I think it's such an interesting concept. And if we apply that to our content creation, we're so much more likely to stay the course next year, to actually publish our content consistently, to show up, to be all the things that we know we have the potential of being. And that kind of leads me into tip number 2, power tip number 2, which is so critical and so important. It's all about finding your pace. Finding your pace. And I see this all the time, especially with entrepreneurs who are kind of in that beginner stages, right? They're either anywhere from the validation stage. If you're part of our business lounge, you know that we break down business stages into 6 individual seasons, right? So validation is the first one, launch is the second, hustle is the third, and we have 3 more: breakthrough, profit, and scale. Now, for students who are usually in the validation through the hustle phase, I see this a lot, and I experience this myself, where you just have this spurt of energy and you're like, yeah, I'm going to create awesome Instagram posts and I'm going to show up every single day. I'm going to do stories and IGTV, and also I'm going to have a podcast and a blog and a video channel, and it's just going to be amazing, and I'm going to do it. And it's going to be great. And like, you're totally amped up, and that maybe lasts a couple of months, and then things start slowing down and you kind of ditch all of it altogether. So I want to prevent what I think is content burnout. And we've seen this in the media a lot. You know, there's been all these articles recently about YouTubers, some of the biggest names on YouTube, and bloggers who just burn out. They're just tired, they're unhappy, they feel this insane amount of pressure around creating content. And for me in my business, I kind of understand a little bit of what that might be like, especially with running a membership site where you're constantly putting out valuable information for your members. I can totally see how someone would be like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not fun. It's stressful. I'm having to like force it. And that's not the goal, really. At least for my business, I totally see content creation as not just a place where I get to serve and show up for my audience and give people amazing value, but also it's a relationship building experience. It's a way for me to attract more leads and close sales, but it's also a way of expressing myself, and it's very much an art in many ways. And so I, especially this past year, realized that pacing yourself is so important, because we're running this marathon again, right? we're kind of just back to the marathon analogy, because it's what we're experiencing. And if I'm not enjoying running the marathon, if I'm not enjoying the content, if it feels like, you know, this thing that is really just overwhelming and there's too much at the same time all at once, it's just not going to be something that I'm going to show up as my best self as, which is one of the reasons why we took a step back from the podcast and said, you know what, I don't know when we're going to put out season 2. And we took 2 years to figure out all of our other processes and workflows until I finally felt like, okay, I can actually do this and be consistent with it. So I want to make sure that you kind of find that balance, right, between commitment, because there's many times where even now, even though I love and enjoy what I do, there's many times where I don't feel like recording, okay? I don't feel like turning on the camera and putting out a new episode or outlining and scripting, you know, whatever I'm going to say in the next one. And a lot of that has to do with discipline. You have to start, right? Going back to power tip number 1 is just negotiating with yourself and saying, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes, you know, and literally turn on a timer, tell Siri, hey, Siri, turn on a 5-minute timer. Let's do this. And then there's this whole other half that it's like, well, I also want to enjoy what I'm doing. And so finding that balance is key. And I think that really has a lot to do with pacing yourself. You don't have to be everywhere all at once. You don't have to necessarily put out, 3 pieces of content, long form pillar content every single week, especially when you don't have a team yet, when you maybe have a full-time job or you're still in school. There's no need to just have to be everywhere all at once. So let's instead find that flow, right? I think at the minimum, especially when you're first getting started, you can put out 1 piece of content every single week. For us, that's even a stretch. At this point, we're trying to increase that, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Even though I have a full team, creating a video takes hours, then putting the blog together, taking pictures for that blog, repurposing that content into social media content, and then putting out a podcast. That's a lot of work. And so for the longest time, we've put out 1 piece of new content every single week. And sometimes we miss weeks. So I want to just reassure you that putting out 1 piece of high quality content every single week is enough. You don't have to be everywhere all at once. And so I love this quote, by the way, of Ryan Holmes. He says, "You can run a sprint or you can run a marathon, but you can't sprint a marathon." So simple, but so much wisdom there, right? You can't sprint a marathon. So why are we trying to go full force 24/7 trying to come up with this insane strategy that will definitely be helpful once you have a team and is sustainable, but we just can't compromise, sustainability and consistency with volume just because we want to put out more and more content. So I just want that to be really clear and decide. I want you, as you're kind of implementing these strategies, I want you to decide what is the pace that makes sense for you. Even though I think that once a week is minimum, you can get away with 2 pieces of long form content a month. You really can. I know bloggers who do it. I know YouTubers who do it. You're going to grow a little bit slower, but it's still better than not showing consistently at all, right? There's different seasons, and I can tell you for a fact that when I started my business as a social media manager and then kind of shifting into consulting, I was managing so many clients at once. I was managing multiple teams, my own, and then, my clients' teams. It was chaos. In so many different ways, it was chaos. And so I didn't have time to create content consistently. And I wanted to. I wish that I would have stuck to kind of minimum viable product and put out content every single week, but it was a challenge. It was really hard. I just kind of, put out content when I could. And even that consistently, even though it wasn't every single week, it helped me grow a lot, just putting out some kind of content, right? So I also kind of want you to think about putting out that minimal viable product is so key. It's so key. I follow these pretty awesome dermatologists on YouTube. Shout out to Dr. Young and Dr. Lim. And they're just sharing awesome content with their YouTube subscribers. And I love that they are just using, their phone or a basic camera. And there's no fancy production. There's no fancy editing. It's just them putting out content. Sometimes it's even live, so they don't even have to edit it at all. So they're getting really, really practical with their content, and they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers on their channel. So it's not about, necessarily having all the glitz and the glamour and making it super crazy high production. Sometimes it's just about getting the content out there, especially when you're just getting started. How can you simplify so that you can amplify, right? How can you simplify your content creation process so that you can then amplify that? I really want you to start thinking about that because it'll make a huge difference for your consistency, which in turn will lead to a lot faster growth. You'll attract more followers, way more website traffic, way more leads, more sales, and that's really what the purpose of your content is to begin with. All right, guys, so before we move on to the next power tip, I'm going to take a sip of my wonderful tea. I think we should make it a nice little habit. I want these episodes to be more conversational, more like you're just literally chatting with a friend. And I love me some tea. So We're just going to make it a habit to drink some tea on the show. Let me know over on Instagram, if you're listening on the pod, what is your favorite kind of tea? If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, I'd love to hear from you. I always love getting to know you guys better. It's just so cool when you guys share like little insights about your life with me. So right now I'm drinking my ginger lemon tea. It's one of my favorites. I have this stuff every day and it's delicious. So quick tea break. So good. So good. All right, let's move into our next power tip. And this one is something I'm super passionate about. If you've been following me for any time, you know that this is something that I live by, preach, literally shout from the rooftops. It's all about planning ahead, y'all. Planning ahead. I don't know about you, but I just can't function when I don't have a plan. And especially when it comes to content creation, this year we've really made it a point to plan things within, like that 90-day period. So every quarter we have our entire kind of roster of content that we're going to be putting out. And I batch that content in advance. But more importantly, I want you to start small, right? Simple is way more strategic. Oftentimes we try to get a little too fancy, and I just want you to start by just outlining your macro content, right? Your long form content for at least the next 60 days. You don't have to start crazy, right? If you're putting out one piece of content a week, that's 8 different, installments or episodes or posts or videos or whatever they might be, right? 8 of those at a time. So you don't have to have them all done in advance. I just want you to know what you're going to be creating for the next 60 days. And I think that can really help. And if you want to even start smaller than that, plan it for the next 30 days. 4 different types of content. Such an easy thing to do, but it'll save you so much time. And I absolutely love, you guys know, I'm all about the quotes, and I think I love them. They make a big difference in my life, and I want to share them with you too. So this quote comes from Alan Laken. I think that's how Laken. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sorry, Alan. He says, planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. Just let that one sink in. Ooh, child, so many amazing pieces of wisdom in that one sentence, right? So I'll repeat it again. Planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. Like, what? How freaking cool is that? The fact that we can, strategically manipulate our future just by planning in the present. That's just a game changer. That's mind blowing. And I really think that you should consider harnessing planning, not just in your business, but in every other area of your life. And the way that you really just put this into practice is by creating a simple content calendar. So pick a day where you're going to be publishing your content. Maybe I usually recommend, depending on what kind of audience you have, sometimes the weekends work, but Tuesdays through Thursdays tends to be usually the time where people are a little bit more attentive. And then definitely the weekend. The weekend is a great spot depending on, again, what kind of audience you have. So for us, we like to publish our content on Wednesdays. And so every Wednesday we have a new episode. It'll be kind of on our content calendar and we'll have it all planned out for 90 days. All you have to do is sit down and brainstorm a couple of ideas. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be final ideas, but at least some kind, of plan so that going forward you can stay consistent and it doesn't have to be this, thing that becomes this like totally overwhelming aspect of your business, or you don't have to feel guilty when you miss your content and have this like super big looming cloud of guilt hanging over you that is totally unnecessary. So let's plan ahead and let's make sure that we're doing it strategically. And then the 4th power tip I have for you, which I think is brilliant and something I don't see a lot of creators doing, is to create content in series. This saves so much time. And honestly, if you implement this one thing, I think that your consistency will just skyrocket because it'll make such a big difference for the amount of time and energy you're putting into your content. Content creation is all about optimization. It's all about being strategic with it. It's all about kind of figuring out how to do it better and spend less time, put out more quality, and make a bigger impact. That's really my personal goal when it comes to content. And so one of the ways that I think you could totally nail this is by using the model that mainstream media uses, right? We see this in movies when they put out sequels. They're not trying to tell a story in a single, maybe an hour and a half or 2-minute time allotment. They're telling the story progressively through different movies. I mean, you see this, of course, in TV shows, right? Same exact process. They're kind of taking one aspect of the story and telling it in a short period of time, and then showing you the next one and the next one and the next one. Putting out content in series is brilliant. You also see this in mainstream media, especially when there's, breaking news. Even if it's over the course of a week or two in a news cycle, when there's something that's really important, you'll notice that they will totally address it from multiple areas, right? So they'll bring in experts and they'll have people debate over the topic, and then they'll cover it live, and then they'll cover the aftermath, and then they'll cover, whatever the follow-up. And so really just talking about the same topic, but breaking it down into smaller bite-sized pieces, or looking at it from different perspectives and with different lenses, can make a huge difference for your consistency. And your audience will probably really appreciate it, because then they get to consume it in smaller bite-sized pieces. They don't have to consume it all at once in chunks, and it's so much easier. The term, right, binging on Netflix exists for a reason. People love series. They love binging. They love watching content, in smaller installments, because they feel like they're in control and it's way more enjoyable. Plus, as a creator, you get to spend such less time brainstorming new ideas and coming up with new topics, because it's a lot easier to break things down into smaller chunks. And I love kind of how this process can all unfold. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you as an example is I was chatting with one of our members in the business lounge, and this was sometime last year. She's an esthetician, and she was just sharing with me that she found this whole content thing a little bit overwhelming, and she also didn't feel like she had enough content ideas. She didn't know how to find these content ideas, and she felt like she didn't have a lot to say. And so doing, her Instagram TV was just not going to be something that she felt she could do long term. So I asked her, listen, you are an amazing esthetician. Clearly people love you. You have an awesome reputation, at your salon. You know how to get client results, and you've been doing it for a really long time. I feel like you have way more in you than you think. If I asked you, if you could break down how someone could get glowing skin in 7 to 10 steps, would you be able to tell me? And she's like, yeah, of course. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, so first thing you do is this, second thing you do is this. And she started telling me, and I was like, wait, this is perfect. Instead of you trying to just put out one video all around creating, this amazing skincare regimen or routine, splinter it out. Take one step at a time and then go deep with people, right? Instead of going wide and trying to cover a lot of topics, dive in deep. And this is my personal philosophy around content. It's why I love this podcast. It's why we have a membership. I love going deep with my members and kind of unpacking complicated topics and really getting to the nitty-gritty of why they work, why it's important, how to implement it practically into your business. And I think that adopting the same mindset and the same mentality could really make a difference for your content and for your audience in general. Going deep with one individual topic that you kind of splinter from a main idea can make a huge difference. So I told her, hey, let's break it down into 7 to 10 episodes, right? What are all these steps? Could you create, a first step all about, how to figure out your skin type? That's probably an amazing episode that you could probably even splinter into 3 more, kind of doing that for each different skin type. Could you then go in and talk about, how to select the right cleanser for your skin type, and what are some product recommendations, and so on and so forth down the line. All of a sudden, now she has 10 episodes that she can put out in a series, and it's so much easier to do it this way. It's so much more enjoyable for her. And speaking of series, it's why we're breaking this episode into 2 different parts. I really want you to get the best out of it. So we still have 3 more power tips to get through. But before we talk about that, If you're struggling with finding content ideas and figuring out what that, kind of looks like, we have 2 full episodes over on the YouTube channel that you absolutely need to check out. I will link them in the description box below so you can totally unpack that. We talk about very practical strategies. Number 1, around your belief system and just how you can reframe your mindset to realize that content ideas are truly endless and there is no scarcity involved in that process. And then the other one is all about staying inspired on purpose and how you use environmental triggers, in your everyday life as you're standing in the grocery line or picking up your kids from school or just having a chat with a client. All of those triggers, if you train your mind accurately, can really serve as amazing ways of inspiring your content so you're creating really original stuff. So I hope that this episode was helpful. Don't forget, we still have 3 more power tips to cover in part 2 that I think will really make a difference as you're crafting your content strategy for the new year. If it was helpful, you know what to do. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. And seriously, guys, this is ridiculous. I have a gripe. I have a little bone to pick with you because our stats are saying that 80% of you guys watching these episodes on YouTube are not subscribed. What's that all about? Come on, you got to stay on the loop and you got to hit the notification bell so you are alerted anytime we upload a new episode just like this one. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, especially if you're watching or listening on the podcast. There's so much more content that we share on YouTube as well, and you don't want to miss out on that. If you're listening to the show, would you leave me a review? Just let me know what you think so far. It makes such a big difference for helping us, kind of find other creators and just showing up on the iTunes feed as a little bit higher up and getting other people to discover this content and this channel. I would love for you to leave us a review. Let us know what you think. And then, of course, share it with a friend. I'd love to continue growing our amazing community of smart, super amazingly talented creators and just continue up-leveling our business as a tribe, as a community, because you are all part of this amazing community of people who are grinding it out, working hard, improving their skills to crush it and serve at a higher level, because that's really what we're all about. So thank you so much for listening in. I so appreciated this episode. If you're a lounger, I will see you in the membership this week. And otherwise, stay tuned for part number 2. I will see you then. Love you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
I feel the warmth of your skin. I feel the touch of your hand. Love you with all of my heart. Makes me tremble within.